So welcome, Dr. Wilberforce, to Chayil Conversation, and I'm so excited to have you
Thank
here.
you, ma'am. Thank you for having me. I'm
Wow.
honored.
And you have such a powerful testimony. From the
Yes.
first time I met you and heard that testimony,
Yes.
I said the world has to know about it. So tell us about where you were born as a baby.
Yes.
Where was that?
I was born in Masaka, a small village in Uganda. It's like about 6 hours away from the capital. And that's where I was born, in a very poor village, very poor community. And I was born during the war in 78, the time when Idi Amin was struggling to stay in power. Yeah.
And so that the whole nation was under stress.
Yes.
Because of the
People
coup.
dying.
People were dying.
Yeah.
Soldiers and armies and police and everybody got involved.
Yes.
Yes.
Coming in your house and just kill your father, your mother, and all the kids, and it was a mess in the whole country.
So you can imagine the spirit of fear.
The spirit
People
of fear.
lived with fear.
Yes.
They could die,
anytime,
by murder, by
Yeah.
killings according
Yes.
to the war,
Yes.
etc., etc.
Yes.
And then you said, now at that time during that whole war, your father got involved with the war somehow.
Yes.
And what was his involvement?
And so my father was a very wealthy man.
So your father was wealthy, but
Yeah.
then you said you were born in poverty.
Yes.
So what does
So
that mean?
my father was a wealthy man living in the capital in Kampala doing
Oh,
business.
so he was living in the city.
In the city.
You were born in the village.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
So during the war, when we got help, the country began to get help from Tanzania. Tanzania, sent in men to come and fight against Idi Amin. And my father had a warehouse in Kampala because he was dealing in food, seeds. And so he hid some of them in his warehouse and he was feeding some of them. And so the Idi Amin regime got to know what he was doing and he was arrested and taken to jail. And when he was arrested, they began to look for my mother. By that time, my mother was three months pregnant with me. And so if they got my mother, they were going to kill her and kill me, of course. Yeah. And so my grandmother and my mother had to hide. And they ran back to the village where my father was born.
Yes. And so you were born in the village then.
So I'm born in the village.
So your mother and grandmother was living in the city with your father.
With my father.
At the time he was arrested.
Yes.
So then you went back to the village and that's the way you were born.
I was born in poverty, in sickness. It was really, really bad.
Because of course your father was in prison, so there was nobody to raise. And how many siblings you have?
We are 10, but I'm the firstborn.
You are the firstborn, yes. Yeah. Wow. So when you went back into the city now, you were living with your mother and grandmother back to the village.
Yes.
With your mother and grandmother.
Yes, and my grandfather.
And your grandfather before they passed away. And you said there was a great fear because AIDS broke out.
Yes.
Did it break out in that village?
Yeah, in Masaka is the area where AIDS started from in the country of Uganda and killed 70% of parents.
Wow.
And so the fear was so much in our village. But then people didn't know that it was AIDS. Everybody thought they were demons. It was witchcraft. And
so it's amazing how the devil can raise up suspicion to bring fear upon people. So they didn't diagnose that it was a disease, a plague of AIDS. So it was demons doing it.
Yes.
So then how do you protect yourself from the demons? So people didn't know who the demons was going to hit the next time? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so everybody was running away. But they trained the whole village. They trained all of us. And they said, because if the mother and the father died in the house, they condemned the house. They put a big cross on the house at the door. So every time you saw a cross, you had to run away, run for your life, because that means there's a demon in that house that kills people. So people were running all over the place. And
you're talking children and adults.
Yes, everybody. Chaos in the village.
Wow.
So I remember, as kids, you're running around playing and you realize, oh, that house is condemned and you all have to run for your life, because they told us if you go close to that house, to a house like that, you carry demons back to your house and everyone in your home will die. So now I'm living with my grandmother. I'm scared. I don't want my grandmother to die because she was the only one I had. I was living with her. And so we were so much in fear.
Wow.
Yeah.
So here we are, people living in fear of demons, fear of a power they cannot see.
Yeah.
How do you fight something you cannot see? And especially if you talk about demons, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What kind of
Yeah.
what are demons?
In fact, I didn't know how it looks like. I
Right.
didn't know. I was like, what is this? But the only thing I knew was the impact that I saw in the village. I knew that they killed, but I didn't know how they look like, how they, but I saw the impact of this life.
So as a little boy then, you're running around in the village. You were saying that you were bare feet most of the time?
I was so poor that I didn't have shoes. I started putting on shoes at the age of 6.
Wow.
So I had no shoes. I had one t-shirt and one, pants.
Wow.
They were torn. Serious poverty.
Wow.
Yeah, serious poverty.
And so you wanted to protect your grandmother.
Yes.
And tell us now what happened that brought you into a place of change. What happened?
So one day I was looking for some fruits to eat, walking around in the gardens, and I had someone preaching in our neighbor's compound, and I realized about 20, 30 people were gathered listening, sitting in the dirt, listening. And as I went there to see what was happening in the village, and this man was talking about a man called Jesus. I'd never heard about him. And so he says, this man Jesus lived on the earth. He came from heaven, sent by his Father. He lived on the earth. He healed people. He cast out demons. He did good things to people. And in my life, in my village, I had never seen a good person. Everyone was bitter.
Wow.
Everyone was sick. Everyone was crying. Everyone was dying. I never seen someone smiling, someone happy. Right. And so he's talking about Jesus, a happy person, a good person, healing people, casting out demons. But when he said he heals the sick, he cast out demons, I'm like, I want that man, because I wanted him to come to my house, protect me, protect my grandmother especially. Wow. And so that really touched me. And when he called upon people to give their lives to Jesus, I was the first one.
Wow. Because
that was the answer. If I take this man in my heart and take him to my home, my grandmother will be alive.
So you can see the great bond that he had with his grandmother, the love of his life, the security of his life, the provider of his life. Whatever she could give, she would think of the boy first, because that's how it is. You know, you save the child first. The child eats first. Yeah. And so to not just protect himself, but the passion was to protect his grandmother. I want to speak to grandparents, how you can have a profound effect on your grandchildren. And grandmothers have saved children, nurtured children, taught children about God while parents are busy. Yes. So we want to encourage the grandparents that at this stage in your life, you're retired, you have time, use that time to mentor your grandchildren and give them Jesus so that he can be the source of their life. Teach them how to pray, teach them how to love, and really impact their lives, because you have that influence in their lives. Yes. And so you then said the prayer with the pastor?
Yes. So he leads us in prayer, and I accepted Jesus. I was 5 by then, and he gave us a book, a small book in our local language. So I took that book to my grandmother and I said, Grandma, I met a man, he talked about Jesus, you can take him in your heart, and here's a book. And she went like, Wilberforce, don't bring demons here. Wow. I don't want to die. And I had to calm her down and say, no, Grandma, these are not demons, this is Jesus, he's a good man. Wow. Read about him in this book. And so she opens the book. It was in Luganda, so she was able to read because she wasn't educated. So she reads Luganda, and she finds out that, there's an answer to this, and so she accepts Jesus, and we began going to church. Wow.
So Jesus is the answer.
He's the answer
to the spirit of fear, the spirit of witchcraft, any demonic entity that can spook you, even the terrorism spirit, that can really control you and imprison you. Jesus Christ is the answer. And then, because there's such a purpose in your life, now God sent someone in your life to
Yes.
rescue you out of the village and
Yes.
poverty.
Yes.
What happened there?
So because we loved church, we loved to pray with my grandmother, and one day a preacher comes again to our village to do a conference, and we went to church to listen to him, and I went to sit in the front. I sat on the floor and I'm looking at him, and he's telling the same story. And I fell in love with Jesus. I'm like, yeah, this is the man I want. I wanted more of him because I knew this was the answer. I wanted to be alive, and I wanted my grandmother to be alive. Wow. So I was there paying attention, looking at him, and he noticed that I was really enjoying the message. And so after his session, he comes to me and he talks to me, he prays with me, and he says, I want to meet your parents. And I say, yeah, meet my grandmother. So I took him to my grandmother, and he asked to adopt me.
Wow.
Because he felt in his spirit that he should go with me back to his home in the capital, in Kampala.
And then you said when your father was imprisoned,
yes.
because he were helping the regime
yes.
against Idi Amin,
yes.
and you said then that he rejected you when he came out of prison.
When he came out of prison, he was so bitter, and there was mistrust between him and my mother, my aunties, so a lot of chaos in the family, and so he rejected me. He sent me out of our home at the age of 3. So wow. I was, my grandmother took me.
So that's how your grandmother took you.
Yes.
And so you never had the love of a father.
No.
And now this pastor said he wanted to adopt you.
Yes.
And then he took you to his home, and
yeah.
he had another son?
He had another son.
How many children did he have?
One.
One. So you became 2.
Yes.
So you grew up as brothers.
Brothers, yes.
And there was love in that home.
Love in that home. I remember it took long for me to accept him as my father, because I didn't know how to relate to a father. And then I didn't know my father as a good man. So I had a problem with calling anyone father. Yeah, the only thing I knew was grandmother.
Okay.
So I had a problem with mommy, daddy. I had a problem with that.
Okay. Wow.
So then we come home, and I begin to receive the love of the Father, and that love really captured my heart. He taught me to love. He taught me to, to become obedient and to give and to share. He trained me. So I have a father, I have a home, and life changes.
Wow. That's why I'm calling this the power of purpose.
Yes.
Because when you are born with a purpose, and every one of us is born with a purpose, and we really need to find it, and we really need to go on that journey of that purpose. And part of the journey is the fight against your purpose, is the fight for your life, is the fight for your heart, is the fight for you to be hardened by fear, bitterness that could have crippled this young man. But because there's rejection from the father, so he had to fight against the spirit of fear. There's fear of demons in the whole village. He had to fight against that. Then there's the outbreak of AIDS, which means that one by one people are dying like flies during that season. And so there's all of that you had to fight. And God brought you in a home, and now tell us about the purpose that you realized was in your life, that you started to preach.
Yes. So now one day we are praying in our living room, and before I went to bed, and I walked to my bedroom after prayer with my father, and I'm sitting on my bed, because every day I went to bed, I sat down before I slept to pray for my grandmother. Because even though I was living this good life, my heart was still with my grandmother. Wow. And I'm like, God, Jesus, every day I prayed, I said, Jesus, would you please come and protect my grandmother from demons? Because I didn't want my grandmother to die. So I sat on my bed and prayed a simple prayer, and I said, Jesus, would you please go and protect my grandmother? I prayed that prayer every day. So that day was so special that Jesus showed up in my room. Wow. And he walked through the window, and he came to me, and he called my name, and I knew it was Jesus. And he said, Wilberforce, I'm calling you to preach my gospel in the nations of the world. Go and preach my gospel, preach love and hope to the hurting world. Teach my people who they are to me and who I am to them, and above all, remember the poor. Now, those are, these are sentences, but it looked like it sounded like I was in this for a long time. And so I asked him one thing and I said, okay, Jesus, I'll do everything you're telling me to do if you promise me that you will go and protect my grandmother. And he says, I will.
Wow.
And so Jesus left my room, but he left so much glory. And so my dad takes me to my pastor, Pastor Robert Kayanja, and I explained the story, and he gave me this opportunity to share. And so they helped me package my testimony, and I began to tell my testimony. People got saved, people got healed, and yeah, I'm still preaching.
And he's still doing that. Talk about powerful purpose from one to the other. Purpose is so powerful, it will keep you alive. You know, purpose is so powerful. Thinking of David going through the caves and the assassin after his life, but purpose kept him alive. And so your message is the gospel of the glory of Jesus Christ. Yes. And a message of hope and a message of love. Yes. Wow. And he's still doing that. And now he's a pastor. He has a church in Sweden. He has a church in Uganda, Kampala. He has an agricultural school to help the poor. He's looking after orphans. And so you're really fulfilling what Jesus told you to do.
Yes.
And so
that's the purpose of my life.
That's the purpose of your life. And so what message of hope can you give to somebody watching today's conversation?
Yes. One is Jesus is the answer. The other thing is no matter where you are, he can find you.
Wow.
He can find you. You know, look at me. In deep in the village, he found me. He used a man to come to me.
Wow.
And I believe every believer carries hope to give to others.
To give to others. So if you call on him,
he will come.
He will come. And so that's the thing.
That's the thing. You call upon him, he will come, he will help you and take you out of your problems.
Wow. This is a message of hope. Whether you're born in poverty, rejected by your father, there's a lot of killings going on, killing by military killing, then there's the AIDS situation, and God preserved Wilberforce Vesudi in all of that and has given him the purpose to go back and help others.
Yes.
And that's your passion.
That's my passion.
A message of hope, a message of hope, a message of love, yes, and glory.
Yes.
And if you call on Jesus, he will come. Why don't you call on Jesus today?
Yeah.
You know, whatever is in your life, he is the answer.
He's the answer.
If it's a family situation, if it's a health situation, if it's a resources situation, if it's a tormenting situation, when you call on him, he will come to you. The Bible says, if you call me, I will hear and I will answer and I will come to you.
Yes.
And when he comes to you, he begins to lead you out of that place into your place of purpose. So let's begin to pray that God will help you to fulfill your purpose, because purpose will keep you alive. And your grandmother died at what age?
At 100.
100
He
years old.
protected my grandmother.
Protected
Jesus answers every prayer.
Wow, that is so special. And so, you know, that meant a lot to him.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, okay, I will protect your grandmother, 100 years old, because she survived AIDS, she survived war, she survived killings, she survived witchcraft power and demons, and she lived to 100 years because her little grandson prayed for her. Wow. So what we're seeing is that you're not too young to call on Jesus, and you're not too old to call on Jesus. If you call him, he will come and he will save you, heal you, deliver you, and guide you into the purpose that you were born. Well, thank you so much, Wilberforce, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I am so excited about this story. Remember, it's the story, it's the solution, and it's the hope. And this is a powerful story. And the solution is Jesus. Call him, he will come. Whatever the situation, he will come. And the hope is, it is never too late for a miracle. So I want you to share it. I want you to subscribe. I want you to see the pillars, Chayil pillars that is showing in this, the worship in his life. he worshiped God. God came, the wisdom to grow like Jesus, you know, in a home of peace. And he's an honorable man. And now God is using him. He's growing in favor with God. He's no longer poor. And now he's a man of influence. I tell you, the Chayil pillars is really seen in your life. And I'm very proud of that. So remember, if you call on Jesus, he will come. And we will see you next week for another great Chayil conversation, because we are a Chayil generation.